I can't say that I've ever had a particular fondness for Beastwarmers. I was never exposed to Beast Wars until my mid-teens, and even then I'd never seen an episode until last year. So when Kingdom was underway and I came back to collecting at a very limited budget, the Beast Wars side was completely ignored, and I kind of regret it. I mean, now that I do have an appreciation for some of the characters from the Beast Saga, I'd love to get my hands on some of them in toy form, but I've missed my chance. Well, maybe not. In Takara Tomi's well-documented efforts to outdo Hasbro at every given opportunity, a new subline of Beast Wars Versus packs was introduced last year, and the flagship pack of that subline is what we'll be looking at today, along with, you know, every other colour variant of the molds. You know how things work here. BWVS 01 Eternal Beast Showdown Primal vs Megatron, or Convoy vs Megatron if your writing is prettier. And yes, obviously the decos are amazing, but first, how do the Kingdom molds hold up? Well, Optimus Primal is superb. The design trend during Kingdom was largely to have incredibly animation accurate robot modes, but make all the beast modes a little more realistic, of course with those beast features carrying over to the robot modes, and it works incredibly here. The sculpted detail and proportions are immaculate. The bulky limbs, long arms and general rounded appearance emulate the screen model really well. The robot parts are all pretty accurate too, with a little bit of the Wolf Cybertron trilogy's typical greebling on display to highlight the pistons, panels and armor here. But the parts from the beast modes are deeply textured. Every portion of exposed fur area is meticulously sculpted and it looks like real hide. I love it. And every portion of exposed skin has the appropriate stretching and wrinkling along with subtle layers of coarse skin texture to really sell the look. I love this contrast of the textural beast parts and the smooth detailed robot chunks, and personally I prefer it to what they did with the Masterpiece version. And one of the best moments of sculpting here has to be the head. It does lack a little bit of personality, but the details, the angles of the faceplate and just how clean the sculpt is, delicious. If there's one issue with the sculpt here, it's just the gap above the chest plate. It doesn't look the greatest, but to be honest, I can look past it since it's the only mishap in the look of this figure. Now, the deco on this guy is the simpler out of the figures in this pack, but that does not mean it's lacking at all. The plastic colours here are simple and bold, simply stark white, pitch black, and a metallic navy blue, with some gunmetal pops for good measure. These are all combined for a very rich but uncomplicated palette, so the bright red paint apps and various silvers on the head and torso aid in accenting the design. And all the paint is applied masterfully, and helps the robot aesthetic to no end, leaving this figure with a gorgeous colour layout. Now, as for accessories, Primal comes with two, namely his blades. These are really nicely sculpted and coated in metallic silver and blue. They look pretty good in hand and have some tabs to store on the back. Now, while these are the only accessories Primal came with, there are some gimmicks to pad this release out. Pressing a panel under the forearms pops out some wrist blasters that look pretty neat, and untransforming the torso lets you access the double shoulder dildos that protect his head from oncoming attack. That's pretty neat defense actually. I really appreciate these little features. They do so much for the figure's fun factor, and work really nicely alongside the figure's excellent posing. The head is on a ball joint with a decent amount of wiggle room. He has forward butterflies, the arms can move outstandingly and all the way around. He has very loose bicep swivels, incredibly deep elbows, Jesus. There's wrist swivels, opening hands, he has a very loose waist swivel, the hips move out all the way with some resistance, and shifting the butt flap lets them move forward and back pretty far. There's limited thigh swivels, good knee bends, calf swivels, the heels can point down and the toes can point up, and the ankles can rock forward and back slightly, and there's some decent ankle pivots. The posing here is phenomenal. There are so many joints to play with here, but unfortunately the loose joints I've already mentioned, along with the fact that the chest plate rocks loosely back and forth, just detracts from the feel here. I know that if this figure felt better then it'd be a blaster pose, but for now I guess I just have to settle for the looks. Transformation here is very straightforward. The arms basically don't change, the shoulder pads just fold down, and the head swap is very straightforward. You just have to make sure that the gorilla head is situated correctly to go back into the robot mode. The legs have some tight connections to worry about, but other than that they're very straightforward, leaving you with a decent beast mode. Now, I am a big fan of the look of this thing. The robot parts hide away very well, mostly, and leave a pretty consistent monkey. The head sculpt looks great, there's a little bit of personality in the expression. He looks so f***ing done with everyone's shit. And the sculpt isn't horribly broken by the joints. The knees can be reversed back to the robot mode configuration to get this figure on all fours, that's nice. The butterfly joints can help with that. But there are some issues. The way the knees work does alright with the features here, but when standing, the side profile isn't great. And a little more aggravatingly, the butt flap for this mode doesn't tab in anywhere. Now, on the one hand, that leaves the legs pretty unimpeded for posing, which is largely the same as the robot. Knees only bend forward now, and the head is on a swivel and a hinge to work when standing straight or on all fours. But that butt flap just floats there and you have to wrangle it about over the robot thighs like a throw blanket that doesn't quite cover your toes. But despite how annoying those issues are in robot and alt mode, I really like this figure. It's very different from what I'm used to. It looks fantastic in both modes, especially the robot mode. And it's very hard to argue with that paint job. But he isn't the showstopper here. He's not the bait on the hook. He may be a juicy midnight Big Mac at a petrol station McDonald's, but Megatron is the glory hole in the men's room. The Kingdom Beast Wars Megatron mold is an absolute f***ing triumph. The sculpted detail and proportions on this guy are incredible. I love how light the detailing is on the exposed robot parts, basically just being flat surfaces with the accents being features rather than large amounts of greebling. All the various shapes and polygons present on the torso and thighs are breathtaking, and the head sculpt is fantastic too. The shapes and details are on point, and the expression that's exclusive to this figure fills it with so much personality. The beast mode parts really lift the detail up here though. The leathery skin, sculpted scales and wrinkles, and every last ridge, bump and pore are sculpted incredibly well, and work great in contrast with the simpler robot parts. I adore the dino head sculpt, very Jurassic Park, and overall the way they've gelled the proportions with the arms and torso being proportionate along with the long slender legs. It's all incredibly accurate to the Beast Wars animation model, although the backpack is a little much. Now, I understand that this is a chug figure and this backpack does do some mythical things in dino mode, but it still is huge. Fortunately, it doesn't affect the figure's balance too much, but it still has fallen down for me on several occasions before. I suppose I can appreciate the aesthetic of it. It does beef him up quite a bit compared to the Primal and makes him look like a force to be reckoned with. But still, I wish there was maybe some kind of feature where the back kibble was detachable like the Masterpiece. It would help the figure in some instances, storage mainly. This thing is enormous, Jesus Christ. Now, the deco on this particular figure, oh my god, this is where my money went. The plastic colours being used here are absolutely on point. The lighter purple and metallic blue for the robot parts pop fantastically against the slightly darker and slightly muted shade for the dino skin. That now that I mention it is actually a rubber coating that's on all the exposed dino parts pegged into a skeletal structure underneath. That's pretty neat. Makes them feel that much more authentic. And it kinda helps the dino posing. But yeah, all that dino skin has been printed with patches of dark orange and metallic green to accent, and has been coated in extremely show accurate stripes and splotches using a lighter purple. This all looks incredible, and in my experience so far is incredibly durable. It looks so consistent throughout. The only parts where it isn't present are the feet, which I believe are made from a different material. The incredible paintwork doesn't stop at the dino skin though. The robot parts are covered in so many different accents and highlights. There's no detail that goes unnoticed. Even that little Predacon badge on the head crest, just stunning head to toe. Now this guy comes with no accessories. He wouldn't exactly be able to hold anything, but he does have a lot of posability. A lot of very strange posability. The head is on a ball joint that doesn't have great range, but it does sit on a panel that can help him look further up and down. The right arm has forward and backward butterflies, can move out but not too far, and can go pretty far around before being impacted by the backpack. He has bicep swivels, the elbow for the dino head bends a little bit forward, but if you rotate the bicep around you get access to a little more range. The dino head can move up and down, and the mouth can open really wide. The left arm is a little more basic. It can move out standardly and around the same as the right. Bicep swivels, a standard elbow, and the wrist can shift up for some reason. And the pincer at the end can open and close, and the top part can swivel and move side to side. He has a waist swivel. The hips can't go out too far unless you shift the hip kibble, at which point they can go out all the way, and they go forward and back standardly. There's above the knee swivels, deep knee bends, the feet can tilt up and down a little loosely, and there's some kinda limited ankle pivots. The posing on this figure is very good. There's a ton of joints to play with, the legs are excellent, but the arms are just strange to work around thanks to the design. He can hold a lot of dynamic poses, but working around the arms can kinda make them a little difficult to achieve. Transformation here is pretty complicated. The arms are fairly easy to work around, but unclipping and working the body around has just enough clearance to not be a pain in the ass. And maneuvering it around the backpack is a little tedious. Once that's clipped in though, it's pretty plain sailing to close everything up. There's little resistance from the rubbery parts, but when it's all lined up properly, you're left with an absolutely astounding dino mode. Like, holy shit. This is incredible. The robot parts all hide away flawlessly, there's basically no kibble, and the aesthetic of the dino sculpting is super consistent. The neck may look a little panelly, but that's largely intentional to allow the right amount of movement at the dino head, and you can adjust those parts to cover any gaps. The proportions are incredible. This thing somehow manages to take the appearance of a classic T-Rex and mix in the show model's proportions really well. I love the way it looks. I know that some people take issue with the head not being much like the Beast Wars version, but I love it. Beautifully intimidating. And the deco is near flawless. I wish the tongue had some paint to differentiate it better. That's something the Kingdom version has up on this guy, but other than that, the consistency is flawless. The green stripe and orange underside are both consistent throughout, the purple striping works amazingly to texture the dino mode, and the colours work incredibly well overall. This is easily the best beast mode I've ever handled, and that is largely thanks to the posing. The head has access to all the previously mentioned joints from the robot mode, which let him look really far up, down, and side to side with consistent movement throughout the neck. The dino arms are on great ball joints. The hip panels wheels that cover the robot thighs are on curved tracks that are on hinges that allow the hips to move forward and back really far as well as out a little bit. That is incredible ingenuity, and the main reason why the robot backpack is forgiven in my books. That aside, the lower legs are exactly the same as the robot mode ones. The tail isn't mounted by anything more than the robot shoulder, which lets you rotate it slightly and move it side to side at the base really freely, and the tip of the tail still has its other hinge and swivel which let you achieve some pretty natural tail poses. And overall, you can get this mode into so many very natural poses, but there is one issue I have with it. Those slightly loose feet that I mentioned in robot mode weren't a problem when he was standing upright, but because the center of gravity is further forward in this mode, it makes the T-Rex difficult to stand at times. It's an annoying little issue, but it does not decrease my enjoyment of this figure to any capacity. Overall, this thing is incredible, and with Megatron and Primal together, this has to be one of the best chug sets I've ever handled, at least in these decos. But since this particular set goes for a pretty penny on the aftermarket, I suppose it's worth a look to see how the other ones fare.
Completionism man, I call for aid!
1, 2, 3, whore. Yes, that's right, I'm a whore for the Kingdom monkey mold, and I'm not ashamed of it. Now, I've been told to talk about the paint and not the mold, but I can't be a guest here without repeating something LouBat's already said. These molds are bloody brilliant. Seriously, go and pick up any version and you will be vibrating all the way home. I know I was. Okay, I've downed a coffee. Let's get into it. First up, Nemesis Primal. Whoa, this guy's good, and is probably the best properly available version of this mold. Okay, maybe not. For once in their life, Hasbro decided to use some decent paint, and it elevates the mold to the next level. Aside from the gorgeous metallic cyan, Nemesis Primal features some additional silver, red, and purple highlights. The purple helps to isolate the beast mode parts and somehow makes him feel more evil. Instead of the Kingdom cocoa beans, this guy has some red baked beans for eyes. Speaking of evil, look at that bloody head sculpt. Now this design sports an aggressive faceplate matched by an equally aggressive squint. I love this, as it really brings the mold to life. Primal's swords are painted in a plasma-like red with a darkish grey hilt. Very nice. Before we move on, this guy is a little lackluster to hold. Now I've been told by Patrice that this is a result of a value pack. That's Hasbro salesman, for this figure is made of plastic. The entire figure feels light and borderline flimsy. You're trading paint for overall feel here. Kingdom Primal. The old faithful. Now Kingdom Primal is the basic white bitch of the bunch, and coincidentally, my first. I enjoy this figure, and it accomplishes what it set out to do. It sets the bar and allows all but one to go above it. The paint is alright and sports similar colours to the Beast Wars Versus series pack, albeit with worse quality paints and no metal sheen. The hilt of the sword, funny rocket launchers, wrist rockets, and various other details actually sport an almost toy colours blue. My biggest gripe with this guy is the knee tolerance issue I've found on multiple versions of this mould. Oh, and paint rubbing on the inner thigh. With some of these figures, the peg that secures the knee into place is too loose, meaning the knee joint bends at the wrong place. It annoys me, but can be forgiven given what this guy does for the price point. Netflix Primal's my least favourite. I tell him I love him, but I mainly bought this one for completionism. The colours here are okay, but are muted and are toned down. In fact, if you have the Kingdom Primal, take him out of the jar, place him on your desk, and look at him through your favourite pair of sunnies. That is how Netflix Primal looks. A specialty of this figure is that it swaps colours in certain places. Instead of blue robot toes, Netflix has grey. In place of the blue chest details, we have some off-white paint. It's okay. Unsurprisingly, Netflix Primal is bundled with the same clubs as his mold mates. However, these feature a dark grey paint. Overall, I'd only recommend this guy for the value, because you get him with a rat trap, but even that rat trap's a little off. Okay, so this is where the completionism was at full force. This figure is without a shadow of a doubt my favourite out of the ones I have on show today. Not only is he rare, I love rare things, but the colour scheme is vastly different from anything this mould has been used for. It represents the original idea really well, and even though I'm scared to touch him, He holds a special place in my heart. Okay, yeah, I had every right to be scared of this guy. Editing Kian here. Whilst transforming this guy, I realised he had a breakage in his knee. Surprisingly on the opaque plastic, not the clear stuff, but he's going back to robot mode and staying there forever. The red clear plastic obviously allows light to shine through it, and the golden yellow accents really help to bring this figure together. The physical sculpt of his noggin is the same as the Kingdom mould, but in this instance he's wearing some lovely lippy that matches the rest of the goldy yellow on the figure. In amongst the clear plastic, Burning Primal does have some structural support in the form of red opaque plastic. Okay, you should know the drill by now. Swords, red clear plastic, yellow blades. Overall, Burning Primal is very, very good. He encapsulates the original Burning design, but is likely not worth the £80 to £100 I paid, especially because I'm too scared to touch him. Sit back, relax. It's time for the main event. Oh, f***ing Odeon. This set is what you should go for. The Takara magic really shines here and is worth every penny. I picked this set up for a c***ishly good price and will obviously never be looking back. The paint is great, the joints are solid, and the value of the pack is f***ing on point.
Kingdom Megatron was the first version of this mold I got. Specifically, I had it for about 2 days before I caved and grabbed the Takara version. And you know what? Despite how much I love that deco, this one isn't too bad. There's a very different vibe on the go here. The much softer and lighter colours don't give me the same in-your-face, this is Beast Wars Megatron vibe. Instead, it feels a lot more adept with the War for Cybertron trilogy's design mentality. Wow, what a shocker, the War for Cybertron figure looks like a War for Cybertron figure. This deco is nowhere near as accurate as the one previously covered. The blue is absent, there's no green on the legs, and the stark contrast between the black and the magenta is gone, replaced by a more maroonish purple paired with a muddy gunmetal, and that combined with the missing paint apps like the back of the head and the forearm, and the complete lack of the stripes, it gets the job done, but it just stops there. But I do find myself liking the beast mode just as much as the pretty version. The end of the tail isn't great because the green and tan extend too far up and down, but other than that I really enjoy the consistency of the colour along the back and the belly. I feel like the simplicity of that really works well alongside the more washed out purple, and the previously mentioned painted tongue helps the aesthetic too. I'm not going to tell you that this is better than the Takara figure, it clearly isn't, but for the prices I've seen this thing go for second hand, I think it's a worthwhile alternative. Just make sure it doesn't have any of the breakage issues common with its first run, but my copy is fine for those. It even has sturdy ankles. Ah. Well, you win some, you lose some. So, after the initial release of this figure, this mold was reused for a couple of alternate variants, T-Rex and the Jurassic Park crossover, but I don't have those two, so I can't cover them in this video, sorry. Wait. Ah, I smell haggis.
It's a lot better than smelling like mouldy tea bags, ye old English fuck. Hello, I'm a stray pedestrian held here against my will, and I'm going to talk about some dinos. The first repaint I'm going to talk about today so that I can get my wife back is none other than T-Rex. Very innovative. And this is just the most default bare bones repaint you can imagine. Skin redder than your nan's after she's finished watching Ant and Dec, with honestly some really fucking slick blue, purple, fucking silvery detailing on the back. He hella red though. And for those of you who have been consuming popular culture for the last 30 years, I'm sure you'll remember Jurassic Park. I'm not even shitting you, this is literally called Tyrannicon Rex and it's supposed to be the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. Honestly, really fucking dig this colour scheme. And while the eyes on mine look alright, why the fuck would you do her like this? She deserves better. Well, fuck me, they're not even alright. Honestly though, that just looks right. Just wish you brushed your fucking teeth before we came out today. And then as we're in robot mode, things just take a dramatic turn. I would say that this guy's just a repaint, but he isn't. Where's your fucking paint gone, you common plebeian? And he was supposed to have a retooled head that had teeth, but instead he's just got silver lips. I hope the Cyberwoman was worth it, T-Rex, because you've just thrown away your career. On the flip side, however, Tyrannicon Rex gets a very dramatic glow up. Gloss black paint, black and red molded detailing, a very G1 Dinobot inspired head sculpt. Now, I think it's safe to say that of these two, Tyrannicon Rex is probably the superior repaint to come out of this mold. Oh, you know what? I'm tired now. I'm not even bothered about saving the wife. I'm going home. Watch out. I'm going into the void. Goodbye.
Well, that's all of them. Overall, both of these molds are incredibly good, and no matter what version of them you get, you're probably going to have a good time, much like I've had with this show. As of this Sunday, it's the 1-year anniversary of the MrLoubat reviews, and my god, look how far we've come in such a short amount of time. Here's to another year, people.
Loubat, it's time.
King hell, finally!